Well, hello everyone and welcome to my library and welcome to a video all about the Greek hero Heracles, sponsored to you by Skillshare. If you're new here, hello, my name is Chinsia, and if you're not new here and you're one of my lovely regulars, hi, how are you? I hope you're doing splendidly. So yes, we're going to be talking about the hero Heracles, or as you can see from the titles, I've put Hercules. Hercules is actually the more common, familiar name to most people. The same reason, there must be reasons as to why it is so, I haven't looked into it, but for those reasons Disney chose to call it Hercules rather than Heracles, despite it being set in ancient Greece rather than ancient Rome. It's a whole thing, but basically Hercules, same thing. But I'm going to be referring to him as Heracles because all the characters that I'm referring to in the mythology are Greek named and set in Greece. Now, there's an extensive mythology around Heracles. This is kind of the introductory video. We're going to be talking about the birth of Heracles leading up to his 12 labours, and I'm going to make the 12 labours a separate video primarily because it is quite long. I've already written a 9 to 10 page script with this video alone, so that's why I've divided it up into two to make it easier for your viewing pleasure. So, this is an introduction to Heracles, how he became to be, etc. This is kind of the lead up to his 12 labours. How did it come to be that way and what caused him to go mad? And hopefully giving you an insight into the Greek family tree that you're probably unaware of because everyone's very interconnected, but it's all relevant. But before we get in with the rest of today's video, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank today's sponsor, Skillshare. So are you thinking of taking a big leap this year, like starting your own business or taking up a hobby that you've been putting off for years? Well, Skillshare can help you make 2022 a year for new learning, growth and connection through creativity. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore their creativity and learn new skills. Have a specific skill you're trying to learn? Well, Skillshare is the perfect place to start. So this month, if you follow me over on Patreon, you'll know that I decided to become a full-time YouTuber, which was terrifying, just for the month, but I know deep down that the creative path is for me, which is why Andy J. Pizza's class really spoke to me. So Andy always knew that he, like me, didn't want a regular job. He tried them, but they weren't fitting for him, and he wasn't exactly sure what he should do instead. So through trial and error, Andy built a creative career he loves, doing a mix of illustration, writing and podcasting projects that are true to his unique strengths and keep him challenged every day. Andy's class on Skillshare strives to help you unlock your creative career that you've always imagined by leading you on a creative side quest to articulate your goals and craft a simple strategy for achieving them. Whether you're making a career pivot or leveling up your skills, Skillshare is a great ad-free resource for freelancers, creatives, and entrepreneurs to help you learn new skills and support your growing side hustle. What's more, new premium classes are added every week, so there's always a new dose of inspiration. If this is interesting to you, then you're in luck because the first 1,000 people to click the link in my description box below will get 1 month free trial of Skillshare. So thank you so much for sponsoring me, Skillshare, and thank you to you if you click my link and support my channel. And now, let's get back to the video. So, who was Heracles? Well, according to Greek mythology, Heracles was the son of the god Zeus and the mortal woman Alcmene, who was the granddaughter of Perseus and Andromeda, two names you're likely very familiar with. Now, like the vast majority of Zeus's children, Heracles was the product of unconsensual stuff. Heracles was actually conceived after Zeus disguised himself as Alcmene's husband, Amphitryon. And an interesting fact about Heracles that most people don't know in the myth is that Heracles was technically a twin, but only a half-twin. Okay, let me explain, that sounds really weird. You see, at the time Zeus unconsensually approached Alcmene, her husband Amphitryon was at war, avenging the deaths of Alcmene's brothers. Oh gosh, we'll need to explain that first, won't we? Okay, so let's break it down. Heracles' mother, Alcmene, was the daughter of Electrion, a ruler of the kingdom of Mycenae. But funnily enough, Electrion also happened to be her future husband, Amphitryon's uncle. So yes, Alcmene and Amphitryon were cousins. But what else is new? A, it's mythology, but also the royal family. Anyway, although Electrion was a ruler in Mycenae, Mycenae was in dispute with the Teleboans, an Acarnanian tribe ruled by King Tereleus. And King Tereleus was a man that was rumoured to be immortal because of his golden hair. And yes, this will link back to Disney's Rapunzel later on. Anyway, King Tereleus sent his sons to go claim Electrion's part of the kingdom, but when Electrion refused their demand, the sons pillaged his kingdom and in the process killed Electrion's sons, Alcmene's brothers. So, without a legitimate heir to the throne, Electrion decided to leave his kingdom to his nephew, Amphitryon, via the marriage to his daughter, Alcmene. But they couldn't marry until Electrion avenged his son's death. Electrion was actually planning on going on an expedition to confront King Tereleus himself. But, in a hilarious turn of events, Electrion was accidentally killed by his nephew Amphitryon, who, in one story, threw a club at a cow, which bounced off the cow and hit Electrion, killing him instantly. What a way to go! So, with Electrion dead, the throne was seized by Electrion's brother, and Amphitryon and Alcmene, although it was an accident, were technically exiled from the Peloponnese to Thebes. So before Amphitryon could marry Alcmene, Amphitryon had to avenge Alcmene's brothers' deaths by killing King Tereleus, which, yes, did involve cutting off his golden hair to break his immortality. But to give credit where credit is due, Amphitryon would never have defeated Tereleus had it not been for Tereleus' daughter, Cametho, who actually ended up cutting her father's hair whilst he was sleeping because she'd fallen in love with Amphitryon and wanted to help him. Yes, this is screaming Theseus and Ariadne all over again. Kind of a thing, isn't it? Greek myths have their patterns and repetitions, you can't deny it. Anyway, it was whilst Amphitryon was avenging the death of her brothers that Zeus R-worded Alcmene and impregnated her with Heracles. Amphitryon arrived the day after this happened and was surprised that Alcmene wasn't excited to see him. She knew all about his adventures, she just wasn't interested, he had no idea, but anyway, they got to the busyness, they lay together, and he also impregnated her, which is why Alcmene gave birth to twins, but from two different fathers, Heracles by Zeus and Iphicles by Amphitryon. So, unlike the Disney storyline, Heracles was born a demigod, not made one, and it had nothing to do with Hades wanting to take over Olympus. However, his life was made a living hell by a different god, or rather goddess, Hera. Yes, the glorious mother of Hercules in the Disney film is actually Heracles' immortal enemy in the original myth. You see, Hera had an anger orientation issue, so rather than channeling her anger rightfully towards her husband Zeus for cheating on her constantly, she always misdirected it towards the women he R-worded, and in Heracles' case, their children as well. Hera hated Heracles before he was even born, whilst he was still in the womb, and she started acting on him then and there. You see, whilst Heracles was in the womb, Zeus had a prophecy that the next son of the Perseid house, i.e. a descendant of Perseus, would become the ruler of Greece. Now, as I said earlier, Heracles' mother, Alcmene, was the granddaughter of Perseus, meaning Heracles, if born next, would become the ruler of Greece. However, there was some competition. See, remember how I also said that Electrion's throne was taken over by one of his brothers? Well, that brother was called Sthenelus, and he was the son of Perseus. And he is actually renowned for having three famous children you've probably heard of: Alcyone, Medusa, and a son, Eurystheus, who was also in the womb at the time Heracles was in the womb. So furious at Zeus's betrayal, Hera thus decided to interfere with his plans of fathering the next ruler of Greece by slowing down Heracles' time in the womb and speeding up the birth of Eurystheus, who, as the prophecy foretold, became king, not Heracles. But Hera didn't stop there. It was Hera, not Hades like in Disney, who sent down two serpents to destroy baby Heracles as he lay in his cradle. But the small yet powerful baby deity strangled them both to death with his bare hands. However, there are some retellings that suggest that actually it was Amphitryon who put the snakes in the cradle to test out which child was his and which one was Zeus's, as the seer Tiresias had told him what Zeus had done, so he knew one of them wasn't his. I suppose that's one way of singling out which of your children is yours, but at the same time, you're risking killing one of your children, but okay then. So after that, Heracles' infancy and childhood were pretty uneventful, and it wasn't until he was 18, when he actually killed a lion that was preying on the herds of the kingdom, that he caught people's attention. Thespius, the king and the eponym of the town Thespiae, hosted Heracles as thanks for protecting the town's herds from the lion. Now, this is very different in many retellings. So in some retellings of the myth, Thespius ordered Heracles to go kill a lion in exchange for all 50 of his daughters, and in another, Heracles killed the lion and was rewarded by Thespius for 50 days, and with each day, Thespius gave Heracles one of his daughters to sleep with and impregnate. There's another version of the myth that suggests Heracles slept with all 50 daughters in just 7 days, but regardless of the details, most stories say that all 50 daughters bore sons, who later colonized Sardinia. What's more interesting is what happened to Heracles on his way home, back from Thespius's. You see, while making his way back, Heracles met a group of minions. Not minions, minions. I'm going to say them the same way. It's spelled like this. The minions were a noble clan that ruled over the city of Orchomenus, and they were coming to collect a tribute from Thebes. You see, okay, a few years prior, a Theban charioteer known as Piraeus accidentally killed the king of Orchomenus. I know, quite unfortunate. So the king's son, Erginus, avenged his father's death by going to war with Thebes. And on top of that, ordering them to pay a tribute of 100 oxen a year for 20 years. So as Heracles was passing them, he overheard the group of minions scoffing that the Thebans were lucky that King Erginus didn't cut off their noses and ears as punishment, to which Heracles responded by chopping off the messengers' ears, noses and hands, and then hanging the severed parts around their necks and then sending them back to Erginus. I mean, talking out his feelings wasn't Heracles' strongest point, let's just put it out there. Anyway, Heracles knew that Erginus would retaliate, so he gathered together an army of Thebans in preparation. So when Erginus attacked, Heracles' Theban army not only defeated the minions, but they killed King Erginus and captured Orchomenus. Delighted with Heracles' work, Creon, the king of Thebes, rewarded Heracles for his heroism by offering him his oldest daughter, Megara. And that's where Hera re-enters the picture. Well, not right away. She kind of gives Heracles and Megara enough time to have some babies, or children, rather. I mean, they had babies, but children. Between 3 and 8, depending on what version of the myth you read, but the most common retelling actually discusses 4 sons, Creontiades, Diacune, Ophides, and Therymachus. So, after a few years, Hera then decides to send Heracles into a fit of homicidal madness, during which he mistakes Megara and his children for enemies of Thebes and slaughters them all, specifically actually burning the children. So after his tirade, Hera releases Heracles from his madness, and Heracles is so devastated with what he's done that he goes to take his own life, but he's stopped by Theseus, who convinces Heracles to instead atone for his crimes. Heracles then voluntarily went into exile, and he sought the advice from the Oracle of Delphi. The priestess there told Heracles that he needed to be purified, and the only way to purify himself was to go to his cousin, Eurystheus. That guy, the guy who Hera forced to be born before Heracles to be the ruler of all of Greece. And Heracles was to do whatever he told him to do. Thus, when Heracles came to Eurystheus, effectively as a slave, Hera was delighted, and she coaxed Eurystheus to devise 12 impossible labours. Well, technically 10, it becomes 12, we'll see why, because some of them don't actually count, and you'll find out. So that's the beginning of Heracles' life. It's a quick video, but I'm cutting it off here because the next video is going to be extensively long. I don't want to bore everyone with that long a video, so it's going to be up. You can watch it. I will link it down below and also in the iCard. So if you had a taster, you're not really into it, you don't want to know what happens, then by all means, you can leave this video here. However, if you're interested to see what happens, then please, by all means, have a look at the next video. So thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. You've made it possible. I cannot thank you enough. And until next time, I will see you soon for another video. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.